new pope is Robert Prevost of the U.S., the first American pontiff in history. We're trying to get Craig Considine on the phone. This is surprising news. I think he mentioned that this person, this cardinal, was in the running surprisingly yesterday. It came out that people thought he was kind of a dark horse for it and has been chosen, which is a fascinating development. We are just getting the information. We're live with you on the air, so it's hard to be watching the news coverage, but we're getting the information in here. What do you think of an American pope?
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. And like we were speaking with Craig earlier, and that's exactly what he's mentioned. I mean, he said that this could be a possibility, and here we are. Not a high probable one, but here we are.
When we can get Craig on the phone, we can find out too, do Robert Prevost's, Cardinal Prevost, I should say, do his policies align with where Francis was? Is he more conservative? Craig is on the line. This is Craig Considine from Rice University. Craig, we've got a pope.
What a historic moment in time that we have our first American pope in history, Cardinal Prevost.
Fascinating. You mentioned him as coming into the race kind of last minute in our considerations.
I did. Mentioned it at the last minute. He was a late front runner. He was considered, papal, but not one of the really kind of cardinals with a lot of notoriety. But he is a long-term. He's had a long presence in the Vatican. So he was basically in charge of the dicastery for bishops. And that essentially is a massive position within the Vatican. So this is the person who is really responsible for anointing the next bishops. So he was quite close to Pope Francis in this way. Mm-hmm. He also has a lot of experience with his ministry in Peru and Latin America. So you have that continuation, obviously, with Pope Francis being from Argentina. Like I said, he's from Chicago. He went to the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. He's got a master's of divinity there. And he's an Augustinian. Pope Francis was also a Franciscan, a Jesuit, and a Franciscan at that too. But this is really revolutionary in a lot of ways, not just for the church, but also for global affairs.
So we are speaking with Craig Considine, who is from Rice University, about the new pope that has just been named, and he comes from the U.S., making him the first American pontiff in history. Do we know the name he has chosen?
It was, I ran out. It was Louis. Sorry, I actually missed it.
No, this is just happening.
Louis the something, I believe. Louis the 16th, or
Leo the
I ran out and I actually missed it.
I believe it's Celeste is telling us Louis the 14th.
Yep,
Louis the 14th.
Louis the 14th. What do we know about you? You mentioned he was close with the previous pontiff. What do we know of his policies, of his concerns? Do they align directly with the Pope? Did he have other issues that have been present in his writings that we may see impact his time?
It's a very good question. So you're correct in the sense that he was obviously quite close to Pope Francis. And the fact that this happened in 4 days, it kind of makes sense that they went with someone whose views are quite close to Pope Francis. And a lot of this has to do with his missionary work in Peru. So we might see a continuation here going forward with the Catholic Church, where it carries on with Francis, going to the spot in the world that the church has not historically had a significant presence in. And there's also going to be a missionary element to this as well. So Cardinal Prevost obviously has a lot of experience, in the field. And this is just, it's really shocking in a way. Obviously, I mentioned this morning. This was a name that I heard at the last minute, but this is huge for, of course, the church. We have a new leader. This is huge for America. And then what impact it has on international affairs is really going to be something that everyone needs to pay a close attention to.
And I'm also curious, if I'm not mistaken, he was made a cardinal by Pope Francis only a couple of years ago in 2023. Is it common for someone this recently ascending to that position to move this quickly up the ranks?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly behind this. I do know that Pope Francis was appointed by Pope John Paul II, and Pope John Paul passed away, I believe, in 2006, if my memory is correct. So this is an important point. I think
you dropped out on us for a minute there, Craig. Please repeat yourself.
So sorry about that. What I was saying is that, yes, I do think this is relatively rare. Most cardinals are in there for quite some time. I think another thing to keep in mind, too, Cardinal Prevost is only 69.
Right.
He's only 69 years old, which is quite young in terms of, Pope years, if I could say that. So
his impact can be felt for a very long time to come.
That's correct. I mean, Pope Francis was 88 when he passed away. So we could be looking at a decade to 2 decades here.
Do you think this signals anything with the fact of that the American populace is become more secular over the years? Appointing someone who can represent a country such as us so strongly would be a stronger tie to rebuilding a stronger Catholic Church in the U.S.?
Yeah. With the United States, we also have to extend this over to Europe. Mm-hmm. The secularization in Europe is even stronger, and Europe kind of, in many ways, looks to America as the big brother, to put it kind of bluntly. So what happens here is going to impact what happens over in Europe. So this is a huge potential geopolitical shakeup, but it's also reflective of the ever-changing church. The Catholic Church in the United States is increasingly diverse, but we also see the growing tide of secularization and the rise of the spiritual but not religious. Though I will say this, too, recent data right before the conclave, it was showing that Catholicism is kind of growing amongst the youth in the United States, and perhaps this had something to do with Pope Francis's liberal views on certain social issues like same-sex marriage and LGBTQ. So now we have the actual Pope being from America. So I would imagine the youth in this country would be invigorated in their faith. I know I am. I'm not particularly young. I'm 39, but I feel invigorated.
That's very young.
I mean, this is a shock.
And just to clarify, it is Pope Leo XIV. I think we may have given a wrong name officially.
Pope Leo, we said, Pope Leo.
This is just
Pope
happening
Leo
right now.
XIV.
How soon do we expect, I know he's out on the balcony now waving to the crowds, how soon do we actually start to hear from the Pope? How much will be work that has to happen internally before he is presented publicly in speaking roles, and how much of it is going to happen immediately?
Well, I think Mass is good to bank on Sunday at St. Peter's. I think that will be his first Mass. I think for the rest of the day today, things will be relatively quiet, probably a couple of small things, but a lot of this is internal. This new Pope is not just big for Catholics. It's a big change for the Church internally. So they have to work their bureaucracy, get things together, but I think within the next 48 hours, we might see a more visible new Pope. Mm-hmm. Cardinal Louis, you said Leo the 14th. You said Leo the 14th.
Yeah.
Yes. Then I would think Sunday Mass will be probably very well attended.
So once a cardinal becomes Pope, what kind of schooling does he have to go through quickly in the policies and behaviors of the Vatican, or do all the cardinals already know that part of it?
Well, I think Cardinal Prevost, given that he's been there a couple of years and he was in the prominent position of essentially appointing bishops, I think he has a pretty good idea of the inner workings. He was relatively close to Pope Francis, so even though he was made a cardinal a couple of years ago, I think he's got 2 years under his belt. But of course, being a cardinal or being part of the bureaucracy is a lot different than being the Pope, and it's a much different image. It's a much different front. You have to handle yourself differently. So that will be an adjustment, and that's no disrespect to Cardinal Prevost. This is something that every cardinal goes through when they become pope. You have to wave the right way, you got to look the right way, and all this stuff.
Yeah. We talked so much about the secrecy of what happens in the conclave and how they go about. Now that it's done and the seal is broken and the Pope is chosen, will we get bits and pieces of understanding how the voting, or does all of that remain a mystery as well?
I think small things will get out. It's the role of the media and the journalists to ask the tough questions, to dig up the information that is unseen and happening behind the walls. And I would imagine things will definitely get out, but I don't think any cardinal would necessarily come out and be extremely transparent with what went down. And I think also not just the media, but people, even like myself as a scholar, we can kind of read between the lines as to what happened here. We have an American Pope. Incredible to even say that. It was on the fourth day, so there was a good deal of consensus. We had someone who was relatively close to Francis. You kind of read between the lines. That's our job, not just as scholars, but also people involved in the media.
We're monitoring what's going on right now in Rome at the Vatican, and the Pope was just speaking. We couldn't hear it. I'm assuming he was probably giving a prayer or something ceremonial as opposed to a declaration of his reign. Would you assume that?
That's correct. Yeah, this is not a inaugural address that we might see on Capitol Hill with the election of the next president. The Pope Leo XIV will not be explaining his agenda here. Right. It's usually simple words. Even Francis, when he came out in 2013, he said, just pray for me. That he kept it very simple. Pope John Paul II came out, as I mentioned earlier, when he became Pope. He said they had to go to the ends of the world to find me. And then he also said something quite humbling, too. He said, if I make a mistake, you'll correct me. So these are moments on the balcony of blessings that is really trying to make an emotional connection to the people. This is not the inaugural address that we might have with the election of a president.
And Craig, tell us how from the moment the decision is made to the moment that the new Pope is on the balcony of blessings, how long is that? So, when did he receive the news that he has officially become the Pope and now he's on the balcony speaking?
Well, it seemed like it's usually about 45 minutes to an hour once they have their Pope. That they come out on the balcony of blessings. It seemed to be about that. I think we were about at the hour mark or 50 minutes. So the deal, they win the election. He has to accept the position. Mm-hmm. And when he accepts the position, he goes to, they call it the room of sorrows. It's kind of when you go into a room, you're by yourself and you put on the regalia, the pontificate regalia. And they call it the room of sorrows, not because it's a sad moment, but it's your burden now. And there's so much that comes with this honor, but it's also a huge responsibility. And then this is also the time where they're deliberating on, or the cardinal would be deliberating on the name that he has chosen. And then they come out to the balcony and voila, it all happened quite quick.
Symbolically, during this period, they, if I'm not mistaken, they release their earthly being and now become the Pope for the people. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. He is on a different level. Talk about a responsibility. You're looking at half of the Christians in the world, 50% of all the Christians in the world are Catholics. It's represented in nearly every country in the world. It was beautiful to watch this as we were waiting for the Pope to come out to the balcony, just seeing all the flags and the great diversity that we see. It's really a global church. And I think our new Pope will very much carry on that legacy and that mission that we saw from Pope Francis.
An amazing moment, and I am thrilled that you were able to share it with us as it was happening. There will be a lot more news that will come out over the next few days about all of this, and And the world changes in a moment today. Don't you agree, Craig?
It did, and it's shocking. And I don't think I'm going to even be able to process this because I'll be so busy talking to good folks like y'all in the media. So there's a lot to do, and I hope to come back with even more insight for you.
Once you've processed it, come on back and share it with us. Thank you.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Craig Considine.